Welcome to the Freedom Project podcast. The Freedom Project exists to make freedom in Christ known to each and every person we can reach, and to encourage and dialogue with those who have already found freedom in Christ. Your host is Joe Weber.
Hello, friends. Joe Weber here from the Freedom Project. So happy you could join us today. I want to just thank the Bikers Church here in downtown Vanier. We're about 3 miles from the Canadian Parliament buildings. As always, I thank them for allowing us the use of their facility. And today, I'm just happy to welcome a friend that I've come to know in the last couple of years. And he's going to tell us a little bit about his life and story. And welcome to the Freedom Project, Tyler.
Good morning.
How's things going today?
Oh, it's going really well.
Yeah.
Woke up early, had breakfast, and praise the Lord.
Amen. God's good. Listen, Tyler, we like to talk about our journey here. Lots of times we get kind of mini testimonies, or we talk about people's experience in freedom with Christ. But we also like to hear how people got to where they were. So why don't you just start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, about where you're from and your family situation, and just a little bio.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was born here in Ottawa. August 29th, 1986 was my birthday. And I was born at the Grace Hospital right in Hintonburg area. And ironically, my father was born in the same room as I was, but back in 1953, October 27th. I was raised with really good parents. We always had family gatherings. The neighborhood would come over every Sunday. It was a nice upbringing. It was nice I had my mom at home running a home daycare. And then my dad was working for the city of Ottawa, and with both of them employed and growing up, we were able to travel a lot. I went to Florida, California, all over Canada, and it was a pretty good life that I enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. So we all have a different journey on our path, and it's always interesting to me. Some of the people I get the privilege to speak to have grown up in dysfunction and in poverty or in abusive situations, but lots of others like yourself have had a really good life, which kind of speaks to the baffling part of addiction. So when did you in your life start noticing that you were leaning into drugs and alcohol?
It was right around age 12, 13. I noticed a difference in interest in the crowds of people that I would hang out with around 12 years old. I always had two different crowds of people I'd hang out with, which would be people that were using drugs and alcohol, people that were not using. Transition from junior high school into high school, considering when I left grade school, I went to a different school for grades 7 and 8, and then I went to a different school for high school, of course. And those transitions were a little difficult for me because I had built a friend base at one school, and then going to the next one, I had to transition into making new friends, different people, more people at the school, and then drugs and alcohol were present. And that was big difficulty for me, and just having the two different crowds I wanted to get along with everybody. So that was my interest, to see what these people were all about. And yeah.
So do you think in your case, do you think you were more drugs than alcohol? I think from talking to you earlier, but drugs and alcohol, did you use that as just a way to give you confidence in those situations, or was it just, did you have a proclivity towards that once you started using?
Yeah, it was somewhat confidence, to fit in, I would say. I was a pretty liked person where I got along with everybody, however, so I believe that I used it more for just an escape. I was at home a lot, and I would hang out with my family a lot. I had a really good family life, and at a certain age, I wanted to venture out more. So that was my escape from the family life. And I definitely started with alcohol, but it progressed very quickly from mild drugs right into hard drugs at age 13.
Walk us through that a little bit and where that took you.
Yeah, so at 12, 13 years old, I was stealing alcohol. I was going to the stores in Quebec, and I was able to purchase alcohol most of the time. I was asking homeless people here in Ottawa to buy me alcohol. Different friends would show up with it, and we would drink it to the point of pretty much blackout drunk. You know, we'd ride our bicycles over to Gatineau, and we'd only make it back to LeBreton Flats, and then we were laying there in the field for a couple hours or so. With the drugs came in junior high school, and I started smoking marijuana, and it progressed. When I went to high school, I started smoking crack cocaine, and that was right at age 14. With the friends that I had that were smoking pot, they didn't smoke crack. I just ended up finding one specific friend, and there was one specific day that I didn't have any pot, and I decided to try the harder drug, and that drastically changed my life in a financial way, but also my mental health definitely decreased from there, and my connection with my family was highly affected.
Yeah, so what's going on with your family during this whole year or so that you went from drinking to smoking dope to hitting the pipe?
Well, at the same time of progressing and transitioning from junior high to high school, my family had a separation in their marriage. My mom and dad separated. And I definitely know now as an adult and going through recovery that did affect me. And I cared for both of them a lot, and I felt somewhat let down by them breaking up. And I felt like they should be together forever, as any kid probably would, sure. You know? So that was definitely an impact on my decisions of what I did.
So when you get into the harder drugs, you fail pretty quickly from that point on, or, I mean, you're still talking when you're 14, 15 years old, and, you know, here we are 15 years later or so, I'm assuming. I don't know. And talk a little bit about that journey from the time, you know, there's a saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that the man took the drink and the drink took the man. And it applies also to the drugs. So tell me what happened to you after you got onto the smoking the crack.
So I was still living double life. So I would still have my other friends. I would still partake in normal 14-year-old activities. I was playing hockey. I had a girlfriend that didn't do any drugs or alcohol at all. I would get good grades if I'd show up at school. I would binge drink on the weekends. I carried a full-time job. I was doing co-op, and I ended up getting the position at the restaurant. I was working at the Bay Street Bistro at the time, and they really liked me. So there was definitely times where I would use for days, but then there was days that I wouldn't use. And like you said, 15 years later, I'm 39 today, and I've never gave up hope to change my life. I've never gave up those non-using friends. I've never completely turned my back on my family or those that cared about me. I always had a drive to change, and I kept that going. That's one thing I never gave up on. So,
right. See, but events caught up with you in your journey, and there was trouble. You had personal relationships, trouble with the law, all sorts of stuff. There's lots of young people that watch our program who probably are sitting in the place you're at, where they've, drank a little bit. I don't know, in my personal life, when alcohol and drugs took control of me, I thought I had control of them right up until the end of my drinking, just 25 years ago now. But I know that it's very insidious, and it's hard for us to see those lines that we cross because we don't know the lines are there. Is there a place in your life where you can look back at now and in sobriety for more than a year and see that this is a place where I could have changed things, or this is where I took a step into full-blown addiction or into crime? Or how did that transition happen for you?
I'm thinking of a time when I moved with my mom from the city of Ottawa to a small town, Smith Falls. And at that point in my life, I was trying to get away from the crack and the heavy drug use. I had made a decision to get away from the crowd of friends that I was around, make the geographical change, as well as reach out for help and some counseling. And I was going to AA meetings with my mom for the first time. It was actually a Alcoholics for Christ meeting. But what really I did instead of all that was I fell right back into the loop of addiction. I found the friends that were using in the small town, and then I started my career in going to jail. And that was around 19, 20 years old. And my first charge was something where I could have been held for a long time. I had an assault police, resisting arrest, obstruct police officer, and that occurred from a regular routine jaywalking stop, public intoxication. And I really realized that I had a lot of anger that came out that day specifically. And to be brutally honest, that pattern continued for up until just maybe 5 years ago of the anger. I started hatred towards police. Of course, around the time when I was 19 and all this happened, I was venturing for relationships myself. So I got into a sexual relationship with one of my first real girlfriends, I would say. And I was living with her. I moved out from my mom's, and I had a vehicle, I had a job, I had a girlfriend, I had all this going. So I really thought everything was okay, but I kept going to jail. I started abusing my girlfriend, physically, mentally, emotionally. I cheated on her. I was cheated on. I had all these hurts, and most of the time it would get let out at all the people I love, whether it's my family. Right. If not, I would get let out at the police, and then that would just put me in a pattern of going to jail every 3 months, losing my license.
All that comes along with that.
Yeah.
So did you see, in hindsight, do you see an escalation in your antisocial and violent behavior with an escalation in your drug use? Are these both escalating at the same time? Is one being brought on more than the other, or by the other, or is it vice versa?
The alcohol increased big time, and I didn't smoke the crack cocaine for a very long time after I moved from Ottawa, but I started using cocaine instead. So I also started using hallucinogens all the time, ecstasy, mushrooms, acid, and with the alcohol was every day. It's upgraded itself from binge drinking to full-blown alcoholic.
It's interesting to me, you mentioned that you kind of were doing a 3-month cycle in and out of jail. were these charges only, were your convictions for short periods of time, or were you out of jail on probation or bail and then you would reoffend? How did that work?
I was really lucky with the criminal justice system where I would get these assault police charges, but then my lawyers would explain who I was the next morning. And even the police report, they would say, we're so surprised how nice and gentleman-like Tyler was the next morning. So I know that people saw this light in me that I didn't necessarily see at the time, and they really gave me a chance. And I had a lot of people fighting for me, including my lawyer, the judges, even the police officers. I don't necessarily know how I didn't do long-term jail at that time, because I honestly got about a handful of charges in a row of assault police. Every single time I would get arrested, I would assault the police. Sometimes it would just be spitting, other times it'd be kicking on the way into the car, or it would go so much as fighting them.
Right.
So
we, as we see with so many other people, and in my own life, the substances create a personality change in you.
Absolutely.
You know, you're this nice, well-spoken kid, and then, you know, my dad used to say add alcohol, you know, and you become a different person completely.
Yeah.
So had you recognized this going on in yourself, that these problems were connected to your substance abuse?
Well, I was really angry. I was still very much angry about the separation of my family. I was angry that I moved out of the city. I was angry at my mom because I really wanted to be close with my mom, but now I had a girlfriend. So I was angry at my girlfriend for interfering with that. I was really just angry at everything, and the substance use was the factor of it.
Yeah.
It just progressed to the point of using the substance to escape it, have a little bit of fun, and then boom, wake up the next morning with all these regrets and all this shame and guilt. And yeah.
So tell me where you are during this period. How long does this period go on? Like 10 years kind of thing, or?
A little bit more than 10 years, I'd say. Yeah.
So in and out of the can for 10 years, in and out of relationships, you're still carrying all that anger. Tell me what, during that time frame, are you in any way involved with church, or are you calling out to the Lord at all in any way? Or are you just trapped in this cycle of dysfunction and addiction?
I was still going to church. I would go to church with my mom in Smith Falls. I was still checking out the odd Alcoholics for Christ meeting. And then I started going to some AA. I moved around a little bit in the 10 years. So I'd be out in Smith Falls, Merrickville, Charlotte Lake with my mom as she moved around as well. But then I would come and visit my dad in Ottawa and stay with dad here. So when I was in Ottawa, I checked out some of the meetings around, and I went to my own churches. I reached out to an Alpha group at one time. I did an anger management course. A lot of things were mandated by court and probation. So I was always a good person at probation. Probation officers really loved me. I would correspond with them in any kind of activity that they would want to do. They had a new thing coming up, I'd be the one to volunteer to do it. So I always had interest in trying to help myself and help others, but I couldn't break the cycle of addiction, and I didn't do any of the steps or any of the things that were suggested at the AA meetings.
Never really dealt with any of the root causes of why you were so angry?
No, never dealt with any of those, no.
Yeah. And the addiction escalates naturally, as it does in everybody. So bring us down up to a place closer to the end of, things never get better when you're stuck in a cycle of addiction and alcoholism. We tell ourselves that we can pull it back together. We think we still have things under control. Maybe things will get better tomorrow, but things never get better. And generally, even if we take short pauses in our abuse, when we pick up whatever the substance is, it's either at the same level or worse. So you've escalated to a place now where I'm assuming your relationships with women aren't very fulfilling. You're angry still. Take us up to that place at the end where it really was a hard crash for you.
Well, I definitely had a spot that I'd like to talk about, and it was when I was in Brockville jail. I'd got out. I had a place with a girlfriend at the time in Smith Falls, and the day that I got out, I had an opportunity to move to a different to move to Edmonton, Alberta, and I chose to move with her. I went to Edmonton. The plan was to stay sober. I got a job right away. I had a beautiful house to live in, and I lasted maybe about a month or so until I picked up that drink again, and that was it. I ruined the relationship. I quit at the job, and I got myself a bus ticket back to Ottawa. Now, coming back to Ottawa, I had no place to stay. My family was at the point where they said, this is it. You got to do something. You can't keep going to jail. You can't keep in and out of this cycle. What is your choice to do something? You can't live here if you're going to drink, you're going to do drugs. You can't. And I made an agreement with my mom that I would go to treatment. I called the treatment in Kingston, Harbor Light, and they asked me a few questions, and they were testing me a little bit, and they said, when would you like to come? I said, I want to come right now. I want to come right now. They said, okay, you can sign into the detox in Kingston tonight or tomorrow morning, and then we'll take you after you've been at the detox for about 24 hours. And that's what drastically changed my life, was reaching out for help and going into somewhere where I could sit and stay for a little while. Similar to jail, where I would get some clean time and do good, but not the jail settings, where people have like-minded interest to change their life, to get the help they need, so I could talk about what's going on with me and really have that one-on-one time. And then also I started exploring the meetings in more depth, and that's what really helped me.
So you're taking it a bit more serious.
Yeah.
The will to break that cycle has become stronger. Harbor Lights is a great organization run by the Salvation Army, and a shout out to them. I've met lots of guys that have come through that program that have done well, and I've met lots of guys that have come through that program that have gone back onto the streets. But that's kind of the beginning of the end for you. Not the end, but the beginning of the end. Do you see it that point?
Yeah.
And I think it probably wasn't long after that I met you the first time.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to get together again because I want to, we've got a little bit of history of where you came from and how you got there, but I really want to focus a little bit on your recovery aspect, and we need a bit more time to do that. So why don't you take a few minutes now and just speak into the camera. If you have a message to someone who is like you, maybe 12, 13 years old, experimenting, it's a little bit of fun, what would you tell these kids about how that worked out in your life as a way of an encouragement for them?
Well, I know that sitting here today that I came to a point in my life where I lost hope, and even though I thought that the drugs and alcohol was something to help me cope with that, I was completely lost in wrong about that situation. I needed help, and by reaching out to people that were ready to help was what really saved my life. I couldn't do it alone, so just know that you're not alone and there is help out there.